Good evening, welcome to Newsnight. And tonight, with the onset of the rainy season, the National Disaster Management Organization is once again sounding the alarm that it is not adequately resourced to deal with potential flood-related disasters. As it serves notice, it will begin nationwide massive demolitions to mitigate flooding.
Yeah, we need more excavators, we need more payloaders, we need more dozers, we need more tipper trucks so that this work can be done rapidly.
We have details as the Ghana Meteorological Agency warns of above normal rainfall across southern Ghana this year.
And so basically, it means we are going to expect more rains, the East Coast and inland areas, especially April, May, June period.
China, US and other Western governments mount an unusually coordinated push to get Ghana to halt a gold royalty hike they say could harm some of the world's biggest miners. We've got details of that story coming up shortly. And also tonight, President Mahama says the government has added rice, tomato puree and mackerel to the list of items banned from land transit in business.
Finance Minister Dr. Atufosin reveals Ghana is close to completing the external debt restructuring program after 8 deals with Belgium today.
In sports,
CAF postpones WAFCON to July after Morocco's withdrawal as host.
And a bit later, the minority and majority trade blame over pirate attack in fierce debate of President Mahama's State of the Nation address.
Mr. Speaker, is it not worrisome that for the first time in our history, we can have pirates coming as close as within 30 nautical miles of our waters?
Pirates are pirates. They would attack. But the problem is after the attack, we are looking at the response, the reaction of our security forces.
We've got the latest of these and many other stories coming up in the next 60 minutes. You can be a part of this show by sending us a WhatsApp on 055 11 11 997. My name is Kenneth Gyasi. Details after this. Welcome to the program. And tonight, Ghana is facing a coordinated pressure from Western and Chinese governments to halt the proposed mineral royalties slide scale, which they say could harm some of the world's largest miners, according to a Reuters report cited by Joy News and head of research here at Joy News, Isaac Ofieje, has details of that particular report and is joining me in studio with more. Isaac, tell us more.
Well, Ken, we just cited this report from Reuters, and the headline is that China, US pressure Ghana to halt gold royalties hike, and it's a document sources say. And per what we've done so far, the checks we've done in terms of when this LI went to Parliament, our check shows that by Monday, the 21 days for the LI to mature will end, and then that will mean that the LI will actually mature on Monday. And now, what does Ghana really want in this new LI? Currently, we have a fixed rate of 5% royalties, but this new LI, when actually accepted, will mean that we're going to practice what we call the sliding scale, 5% to 12%. And this LI has actually stated that whenever gold prices go up by some $500 per ton, or per ounce, Ghana has the right to increase that royalty scale by 1 percentage point. So it could move from 1% to 6% to 7%, and the maximum in this whole scale is about 12%. And the industry has actually been fighting back because they say that if you look at how much we are paying to you in terms of taxes, if you add the corporate income tax, if you add the royalties we are paying and other taxes, including the sustainable levy that we are paying currently, we pay more than 50% of what we earn to you as taxes. Well, they went to the finance ministry wanting this to be, the industry wanted the new sliding scale to be between 4 to 8%. Government says that, well, we may not be able to do that for you now because we still think that we should maintain the 5 to 12%. And then the sustainability levy that you pay 3% currently, we are going to take 2 percentage points of that, pay 1%, and then go ahead with the 5 to 12% sliding scale. So this is the latest information we are getting from that Reuters report, that there is now pressure from US other Western governments, including even China, that Ghana should halt this sliding scale. Why do they say that? They say that if we should continue with this, that is going to affect some big mining companies. Kenneth.
Isaac Ovieje, thank you very much. Let's go onto the telephone lines right now and speak to Patrick Stevenson. He's the country manager of Natural Resources Governance Institute. And Mr. Stevenson, welcome to the program. What do you make of this developing story?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Evan. It's very interesting to hear that, but also not entirely new. Because again, we have seen historically that not only Ghana, but several countries on the African continent and indeed the global south have not significantly benefited, from the upswing of prices for minerals that we have been producing and extracting for centuries, right? And so, at least we at NRGI, when this conversation started some 23 or 4 years ago, had actually done some piece of work. This was on the back of the I'm sure you recall the lithium, agreement that, broke the public discourse in this country. And when we had looked at that, one of the propositions we had made, that if government wanted to make the most from our minerals, that it was time we shifted away from the flat royalty rate regime that we had. It's something that was a bit more staggered, because outside of even the critical minerals like lithium and the others, like the bauxite, for instance, there is an indication that demand for these minerals are going to see an uptick because of questions around energy transition, for example. If you look at our traditional and precious minerals like gold, current geopolitical developments have pushed prices up. And it's important that countries in the global south benefit from these price upticks. So I find some of the arguments that I just seen in the report on the pressure being mounted on government vis-a-vis costs that this will have on mining activity, very, very strange. I don't think that seems to have been supported by any credible data and an analytical, at least I haven't seen, right, other than the political considerations where we still get fixated on this question of getting very little from our mineral resources. And there's a certain history to our royalty regime, and I'm sure you probably are familiar with it, that, we had something that looked like a sliding scale regime, but it was not indexed to price uptick, and the companies benefited, significantly. When we passed our mining law in the mid-2000s, then the companies negotiated with our government always on the lower end of that band. So in 2010, we pushed for another reform, and that reform introduced a flat regime at about 5%. That also did not deliver significant value because prices of these commodities kept, growing. And so it then became a question of what we could do so the country could benefit from these. And I think there was extensive consultation, to the best of my knowledge, even to the point where when the minister had then proposed this in Parliament without significant consultation, he said, "We'll try to adapt in a month." And then we were brought to the table. In fact, I am even of the view that the gap between the bands, which are $500 per ounce of gold, that band is even too wide, because it would take a while for some of those banks to trigger the royalty rates we are looking for. The companies have already locked in costs, so I'm not particularly sure what, again, the question on cost dynamics will look like. They make reference to the stabilization levy, which government considered extensively in making revisions downward from about 3% to 1%, if I remember the numbers right. So this again speaks to, in my view, what may look like geopolitical pressure that may still subvert the interests of a country in optimally generating significant value from our minerals. And I think it should serve as a wake-up call. I'm sure in the next, this is just breaking, the next couple of days,
right,
we will get the opportunity to properly understand what the drivers really are, and then get, to support, broader citizen engagement and advocacy around it. Fundamentally, because there's a big call now for African countries to prioritize the value addition of their own minerals. And this, at least in my view, speaks to that. And if you start thinking actively about the geopolitical pressures may not be things that we have to navigate. It's very interesting to hear this, Evan.
Right, Patrick Stevenson, thank you very much. He's the country manager at Natural Resource Governance Institute. I still have Isaac Ovieja in the studio with me. He's the head of research here at Joy News. Isaac, you have additional information to this fast developing breaking story.
Well, Ken, we have details of that sliding scale, and in fact, per what we have here, it simply means that when gold prices are 1,900 per ounce or below, government gets to charge 5% royalties. If it is between 1,900 and 2,000, 6%. If it's then between 2,000 and 2,500, 7%. And when it's about 4,500, government gets to charge 12%. So this means that if this is approved and accepted and it matures in Parliament and it's accepted, it means gold prices currently around 5,000 per ounce, right?
Yeah.
It means that mining companies are supposed to pay Ghana 12% as royalties. And they have made a point that, well, if we do our own calculations, we are paying so much already in terms of what the chamber is saying. So they say that currently they pay what they call the general royalties rate of 5%, with 3 companies operating under development agreement that apply rates between 3 to 5%. Now, mining companies also pay 35% corporate income tax, 3%, that's what I spoke about, growth and sustainability levy, as well as other taxes as 10% free carried interest, import duties, withholding taxes, mineral royalties fees, ground rent, and pay as you earn, which is the payee that we all know. And they say that, well, if this new sliding scale is approved and implemented, it is going to increase their effective tax rate from 60% to 68%. They've made a point that if there should be any sliding scale, it should be between 4% to 8% and not 5 to 12%, Ken.
That's an interesting developing story there. You're still listening to News Now here on Joy 99.7 FM. You can be a part of this show, as I mentioned earlier, by sending us a WhatsApp on 055 11 11 997. Let's bring you other stories this evening, as the Accra Metropolitan Assembly is threatening to jail residents who refuse to participate in Saturday's National Sanitation Day exercise. In a statement, the Assembly says failure to comply constitutes an offence punishable by a fine of up to 100 penalty units, a jail term of not less than 30 days, or both. The warning comes ahead of the 7th March National Sanitation Day exercise, where the minority in Parliament has criticised the exercise, saying it fails to address core sanitation challenges amid delays in paying arrears owed to waste contractors and insufficient provision of essential materials for waste collection. We'll hear from them shortly, but first, my colleague Stephen Mensah is joining me in studio with details of that statement from the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Stephen, what does this statement say?
Well, Kenneth, the statement says the Assembly says this month's exercise will involve intensive cleanup operations across key parts of the capital. To ensure the exercise is effective, the Assembly says it will deploy public health officers, popularly known as Sama, along with the sanitation task force, sweepers and janitors across all sub-metros. They will be supported with logistics and equipment for desilting, refuse collection and proper disposal at approved sites. The AMA says it remains committed to working with stakeholders to make Accra a smart and sustainable city, and is urging all residents to play their part this Saturday.
And what are the target areas for this cleanup exercise?
The targeted areas include Adbibloshi, the Central Business District, Tuesday Market, Chemu Na, Kaneshi and Circle, and the focus will be on desilting choke drains, sweeping streets and alleyways, removing unauthorized posters and banners, and cleaning markets, lorry parks, and other public spaces, all aimed at improving sanitation and preventing flooding as the rainy season approaches. The exercise is expected to take place from 6 a.m. until the work is completed as part of ongoing efforts to promote environmental cleanliness and public health in the metropolis.
Stephen Mensah, thank you very much. I've been joined by Gilbert Ankra. He is the Public Relations Officer at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Gilbert, welcome to the program. There are already questions as to whether this bylaw sanction is enough deterrent.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and on behalf of the Mayor, Honorable Michael Pasoli, good evening to the tourist. Of course, as an assembly, we would want the law to bite more, but currently where this is where we find ourselves. The Assembly 2017 communal bylaw clearly states the punishment for not adhering to some of these communal labor within the city, and it's up to a fine of 100 penalty units. Let me say that the penalty unit. So for this 100 penalty units, we are looking at something around 1,200 CDs. So that is currently what the law states. We are working within the law. But as an assembly, we are quite hopeful that people will come on board, more especially because we are marking our Independence Day celebration. So we want people to rally around the entire celebration. Residents within their various communities, our assembly members are also supporting. They should come on board and ensure that come Saturday we all clean our various areas, meet. We will provide logistics to ensure collection as well.
And Gilbert, how does the Assembly plan to sustain sanitation improvements beyond this one-day exercise you're embarking on the 7th?
Thank you very much. The exercise with respect to cleanup is something that is ongoing. And let me even use the Clean Ghana as a reference. Every Wednesday, the public health officers, together with Joy, your reputable station, they move into the market, especially at Bobuchi district. We're focusing on our Bobuchi to ensure that there is some cleanliness within that particular entity. As for the silting work, it is something that is ongoing.
Right.
This is a communal bylaw, and as we were all aware, the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, launched a program. So as part of supporting with respect to our bylaws, this is where we find ourselves. But as a city, the more we do the cleaning, because don't forget that the waste is generated on daily basis, and if we don't get one particularly to ensure that we move in and then do that communal labor form of cleaning, it will be very, very difficult. We are also advocating for people to do the cleaning on daily basis as it's being done.
Gilbert Ankra, thank you very much. He's the Public Relations Officer at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. We can now listen to the minority in Parliament who have been criticizing the efficacy of the government's National Sanitation Day. John Dako is on the Local Government and Rural Development Committee and is also a Member of Parliament for Swami constituency.
No, it hasn't been effective. If it has been effective, we will not be doing this every month. We have to find a better way of treating our waste. In fact, it's one of the things that as a country have failed to do. Our cities are way dirtier than any regular city in Africa. I'm not even comparing Europe or Asia. In Africa, I think that we're one of the lowest in terms of cleanliness. And we've been doing this, at least since this government came for a year. We haven't improved on that. The point is that the private companies who were doing this, it might be haven't been treated well. Zoom Lion, government hasn't paid Zoom Lion for so long. And so, in fact, we are unable to even clean our cities and even dispose of the waste.
John Dako is a member of the Local Government and Rural Development Committee and also an MP for Swami. And meanwhile, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly has prosecuted 10 fishmongers and issued bench warrants for 7 others over the insanitary conditions with which they preserve fishes in Jamestown. My colleague Stephen Mensah has more in the latest from the Joy Clean Ghana campaign.
The Accra Metropolitan Assembly Sanitation Court fined 10 fishmongers 50 penalty units each, equivalent to 600 cedis, and issued bench warrant for 7 others who failed to appear in court for drying fishes on medians. This follows the Joy Clean Ghana campaign's visit to Jamestown, where it's uncovered the fishmongers were drying the fishes meant for human consumption on the road medians, exposed to dust and fumes from the vehicles. Florence Kuchi, Director of Public Health at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, warns these practices could spark disease outbreaks.
Yourself, you saw it. The fish was dried. Somebody went, I don't know whether the person has decided to shit inside or the person went to step on the shit and came to walk on the fish throughout. You saw it. You asked me why we are not collecting it. How can we collect sand that has already been contaminated with human excreta? Because of the vehicular emissions and the ties, there's also a high risk of lead and cadmium contamination on these fishes. And when you eat it, you can develop upper respiratory diseases. It is like some of the chemicals are carcinogenics. And not just that one alone. With the microorganisms, it can lead to diarrhea, it can lead to cholera, it can lead to typhoid fever. Some people go to the market, they don't even wash it. They just remove the dish and they want to taste it to see how palatable it is before they will buy. You stood there and they are telling you they are not selling it to human beings. Whom are they selling it to?
The Joy Clean Ghana campaign continues to spotlight sanitation lapses across markets, urging collective responsibility from both authorities and citizens. For Joy News, Stephen Mentan.
From sanitation, let's talk about the weather, because the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, is raising strong concerns over limited resources to address perennial flooding and related challenges as it prepares to begin a nationwide demolition exercise aimed at minimizing the situation. The organization is racing against time to avert the challenge, which over the years has led to the loss of many lives and the destruction of properties worth millions of cedis. The Director General of the organization, Joseph Kuyon, who led an inspection tour of some flood-prone areas in Accra, says NADMO plans to intensify the pull-down of illegal structures on waterways, but lacks adequate resources and logistics effectively to carry out the plan.
What is temporarily holding us is what we spoke about at Ga East, about the drip equipment. The drip equipments are there, but they are not enough. So we need to marshal logistics. This work, if we leave it to drip equipments and what I have at NADMO, it will take us months to clear the debris. But if we can get support and raise logistics from other agencies, it can be done in a week or two.
What kind of support would you need?
Yeah, we need more excavators, we need more payloaders, we need more dozers, we need more tipper trucks so that this work can be done rapidly and then dredging can begin at the other end of the lagoon.
So apart from the equipment, I'm sure that you would also need some financial support. How much do you think would help NADMO in clearing some of these drains and also helping you to do your work ahead of the rainy season?
A beggar has no choice. Whatever anybody can support us with, we'll be grateful to the person. There will be more demolition because you can see today, we demolished this place, cleared structures. Today you are here, you saw people putting up other things. And so we would ensure that people are forced to obey the law. We will ensure.
That's the Director General of NADMO, Joseph Kuyon, and he has also noted that the organization has been working significantly since last year to fix many broken drains through extensive desilting exercises to sustain the fight against flooding in the Greater Accra region.
I always say that managing disaster is a process, not an event. We embarked on flood preparedness and prevention since last year, and we're witnesses to His Excellency himself touring some parts of Accra to acquaint with the flashpoints and preparations that were being done. And after that, we have worked along the line with the various MCEs and then the local authorities to ensure that we are ready and prepared should flood occur, and not only that, to also ensure that as much as possible we prevent it from occurring. And so we did some demolitions, we cleared drains at Okaikwe where we stopped first. You saw the work that has been done on the drain after the president's visit, and in Ga East you saw the work that has been done after the flooding. I think that was the last flooding serious incident last year. It took about 5 lives.
Right, let's go into the telephone lines right now and speak to Dr. Eric Isumi. He's the Director General at the Ghana Meteorological Agency. Daniel Nate is also the Greater Accra Regional Director of NADMO. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. I want to begin with you, Dr. Isumi. Your forecasts indicate above normal rainfall across southern Ghana this year. What exactly should residents expect during the peak of the rainy season?
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Asuman. So what our forecasts indicate this year, as you rightly indicated, for especially April, May, June period, East Coast and inland areas are expected to have above normal rainfall, and the forest transition and northern zone should also expect to receive normal to above normal rainfall totals. And when we say this, what we are saying is that compare the expected rainfall in the forecasting period to the long-term mean, 30-year analysis of the rainfall pattern, and we are saying that we are expecting more rainfall than the long-term mean. What we will say, specifically to your question, is that let the citizens or Ghanaians follow our forecast and warnings, the update. So this is a seasonal outlook, but this will be followed by a weekly forecast, a 3-day forecast, a daily forecast, and then when we experience any significant development in the atmosphere, we will come up with a warning. And let Ghanaians follow this information, these advisories and these bulletins from GMET, and then take necessary precautionary measures to save their lives and property.
Right.
That's all what we are calling Ghanaians to do. Follow the forecast and take the necessary actions when we issue the warnings. We are working hard to make sure that the forecast reach every person in Ghana. And so, as I speak, we are working with National Communication Authority to make sure that when the warning is issued, it will pop on everybody's handsets or phone, and then draw your attention that something is coming. Look at it.
Right. Dr. Asuman, and which regions are most likely to be affected by heavy rainfall and potential flooding?
So, as I indicated, April, May, June, the East Coast and the inland areas, and we are talking about East Coast, we are looking way from Cape Coast all the way to Ada, Saw Pond all the way to Kita, that's the East Coast, and which include Accra.
Yeah.
And so it will affect Accra. So these are the areas that we are talking about.
Right.
But once again, let me emphasize that this is an outlook and to be validated by our weekly, daily, and the warnings.
Dr. Eric Asuman, thank you very much. He's the Director General at the Ghana Meteorological Agency. Dennis Nate is still with me on the line. He's the Greater Accra Regional Director at NADMO. Dennis, welcome to the program once again. You are proposing demolitions of structures on waterways. How will NADMO ensure the exercise is carried out fairly without causing undue hardship to residents?
Thank you very much to your listeners as well. And yes, just like Director General for GMET rightly said, they will be expecting heavy rains this time around, and the rains are going to start very early. And so, as part of our flood mitigation process, we have started earmarking places where we'll be serving as where we can send people in case of any possible flooding. And so with the demolition exercises, like my Director General indicated earlier on, there are houses that we have already earmarked for demolition, and we started doing this in phases. So we have done phase 1, phase 2, we will continue with the phase 3. So this afternoon we visited some of the flash points in Greater Accra. We inspected some of the garage projects ongoing. Last year, for instance, when we visited some of the places, we realized some of the retaining walls were down, but as of today, we have seen progress on most of the drains that serves as intake into the main Folly Lagoon. We visited the East municipality as well, and we realized that they have done a lot of dredging, which opens up the drains to accommodate enough floodwaters should we expect heavy downfall.
Right. Dennis Norte, thank you very much. He's the Greater Accra Regional Director of NADMO. And Richard Kofi Ameko is also joining me on the line for more. He's the officer in charge of drains at the Ghana Hydrological Authority. Richard, welcome to the program. What are the main structural causes of flooding in Accra from your hydrological standpoint?
Yes, hello. Good evening to your listeners and other viewers on other social media handles. Straight to your question. Yes, having structures built on flood-prone areas, wetlands, and then people dumping in refuse into our drains. Those are some of the causes.
Right. And what engineering intervention should government prioritize to reduce the long-term risk of flooding in flood-prone communities?
Yes, the long-term solutions are to put in the drainage structures by constructing it either with concrete or having a nature-based solution by having some boulders along the banks where it is appropriate. But where it is urban areas, we need to put in solid concrete structures,
right,
so they can be able to convey flows.
Richard Kofi Ameko, thank you very much. He's the officer in charge of drains at Ghana Hydrological Authority, and that brings us to business. And George Riafe has got all the latest. George?
I mean, Kenneth, it's quite an interesting discussion. And is it in the Bible that talks about let those who have ears
listen?
Listen, because we don't want to get there.
Yeah.
The implications of this, of those who are living in the low-lying areas as well. Do you have to move now? Also about NADMO, how do we equip them? I stand to be educated, or maybe not to spew my ignorance, but this might be the first time I'm hearing the Met Service coming up publicly in terms of a report that is giving us these warnings about this rainy season. What this also mean for our farmers in terms of having a good rainy season.
Yeah.
So let those who have ears
listen
to it. Well, coming up in business, we'll be getting you some details on the finance minister as he reveals that Ghana is close to completing the external debt restructuring program after an aid agreement with the country Belgium. An economist, Professor Siram Karo, expresses concerns about the city's outlook if the current crisis in the Middle East doesn't end soon. The business news on Newsnights is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all your office essentials. Cintas Tanks and Pepsodent Herbal and Charcoal. Welcome back to business on Newsnight. Now, Finance Minister Dr. Atuforsen has revealed that Ghana is close to reaching a deal with all its bilateral and commercial creditors under the debt exchange program. The finance minister revealed this after he signed a deal with Belgium today. There is more in this report.
Government in 2022 kicked off the process of restructuring more than $13 billion in debt owed to external bilateral creditors as well as commercial institutions. The majority of the agreement was signed by the previous administration, while the new government continued the process, bringing the total number of countries involved to 8, including Belgium, with which an agreement was signed this afternoon. Speaking at the program, Finance Minister Dr. Atuforsen recalled what he described as a difficult period that the country endured during the crisis, which forced the government to declare debt default. The minister also stated that the country is now witnessing a significant economic turnaround as reforms and fiscal consolidation measures to take effect. The announcement by the finance minister of closing a deal with external bilateral and commercial creditors comes at a time when the government is preparing to issue a 20.1 billion cedis infrastructure bond later this month. The issuance of this infrastructure bond, as well as the cocoa bond, comes after the expiration of restrictions placed on Ghana due to the debt exchange program.
And that is a business desk report. Now, economist Professor Seram Karwa is worried about the city's outlook if the current war in the Middle East doesn't end soon. The warning is coming after the city made some strong gains in the first 2 months of this year. However, there are concerns about whether this recent stability can be sustained. But speaking with Joy Business, Professor Karwa indicated that the current development in the Middle East presents some mixed fortunes for the local currency.
As we speak currently, the prices of food on the world market has increased. And if the government do not absorb the shocks that will come in, then that will go a long way to affect the import of crude. And if crude goes up, it affects all commodities that we have in the market. And that can in a way push the inflation rates a bit. But that impact can be felt in 2 weeks. I told the war would continue for the next 4 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks. If it continues, then there is the likely effect that this impact of the war may have effect on the currency that we have, because global trade will change, import more than we export. That can also affect the demand for the currencies that we have, and that can increase the dollar rate, and that may also affect the rate of inflation that we have in the country.
Economist Professor Seram Kawo. Now, Chamber of Petroleum Consumers has criticized the National Petroleum Authority with the decision to hold the discounted pricing of petroleum products by the oil marketing companies. The authority in a letter last week directed all the oil marketing companies to hold the practice effective March 16, 2026. But Executive Secretary of the Chamber, Duncan Amwa, says there is no justification for this action by the regulator.
I do not think that the OMCs are that bad to themselves to want to say, I'm doing predatory. Sometimes they just want to attract a little more volumes. Sometimes they just want to be able to even compete fairly against the more established brands, right, who operate in certain locations that are approximate to them. I do not think this benefits me sitting here. I do not see how this will benefit my uncle sitting in Takrade if he can get a little more discount than Zen has already provided. If you can get a little more discount than Gold had already provided across MC. We are saying otherwise. Again, you are spot on to say that, look, the indicators, as Dr. Opon had rightfully suggested, which Abbas also confirms, is that the next window could be interesting. Price could spike. In the face of this spike, if some OMC or a BDC had stock, right? And I always say this, the assumptions that sometimes we make to come to some of these policy determinations, the assumptions themselves are flawed.
Duncan Amwa is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. In a separate development, ranking member on the Energy Committee, Collins Admarco Mensah, says he wants government to come clear on the cost and impact on the economy. This should also propose some solutions. Mr. Mensah says government must not delay on this issue.
I think at this particular point in time, what I expect government to be doing, and I'm sure by now some discussions are going on, is for a meeting, an emergency meeting to be held. I'm sure NPA by now will be giving briefings to the Minister of Energy on the implications of all that is going on. I mean, we all know what goes into the price build-up. I mean, government plays a role with our taxes and some levies that are part of the pump price. I'm sure if it continues like that, government must take a very bold decision at this particular point in time to see how best they can cushion the consumers. Don't forget that the increases in the crude oil price also have some positive effects on us as a country, because we are an oil-producing country. What that means is that when you are going to sell, you're also going to make more revenue. Government must, I think, situate the increased revenue that will be coming in as a result of the increase in the prices as against the cost that consumers are going to incur. And I'm sure at that particular point in time, government will come to a compromise.
Ranking member on the Energy Committee of Parliament, Collins Admarco Mensah. Let's turn our attention to the stock market. And it's quite a good time to be investing on the Ghana Stock Exchange, as returns made since the beginning of this year now stands at more than 62%. Now today, more than 10 stocks witnessed price change at the end of trading on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Some of the key stocks that went up, it was MTN, was up by 12 pesos to close at 5 Ghana cedis 12 pesos. Standard Chartered Bank was also up by 5 Ghana cedis 19 pesos to close at 57 Ghana cedis 15 pesos. SIC Insurance, which has also been having some good run on the Ghana Stock Exchange, was up today by 5 pesos and is now worth 4 Ghana cedis 40. That is 4 Ghana cedis 95 pesos. That's all for business. But tonight on PM Express, we're still talking about development in the Middle East and the impact on Ghana's economy. We're engaging Dr. Tui Champon. He's a consultant or an advisor at the Ministry of Finance. Dr. Edu Osusakode is an economist. And also there's an angle about those who go to the Asian region to trade. That's why the president of GUTA will be our guest as we look at the Middle East crisis and the impact on Ghana's economy at 9 p.m. on Joy News and all our social media platforms.
It should be an interesting conversation because I've been following the conflict keenly. Thank you very much, George. It's now time for sports, and Benaya is here with the latest.
Charlie, Morocco, the people, what's wrong with them?
Why?
Because they didn't win the African Cup of Nations. They are trying to show people Pepe. You know, they're supposed to host the Women's African Cup of Nations.
Yeah.
And because they didn't win the AFCON, it's like they are still angry. They are trying to say, they've been hosting a lot of tournaments. We didn't win the AFCON, so if they decide to win the Women's African Cup of Nations, it's kind of like they are putting CAF under some kind of punishment.
That should give Ghana some opportunity to host some of these matches, don't you think?
Why would you do something like that? Anyway, so the Confederations of African Football announced today that it has rescheduled the date for the CAF Women's African Cup of Nations, which was scheduled to take place from March 17 to April 7 in Morocco. Now, CAF said the tournament will now take place from July 25 to August 16 to ensure the success of the tournament in light of certain unforeseen circumstances. Now, my colleague Lawrence Beidou has been explaining what this means for the Black Queens.
All 16 teams are unaware whether the tournament will go ahead as planned. Ghana has been in camp, Kenya has been in camp, Ivory Coast have been in camp, try to prepare for the start of the tournament. However, the communication around the tournament has not been forthcoming. CAF in the last few days have put on hold all promotional activities as part of whipping up interest for this tournament. Talks of postponing the tournament has come into the picture with several media reports suggesting that Morocco are currently doubting their abilities to hold the tournament. In the development as well, South Africa have placed themselves on standby to be the new host of the tournament should Morocco decide to bow out. A reminder that the 2026 WAFCON also serves as a World Cup qualifier for the 2027 tournament that will be played in Brazil.
Hopefully the tournament happens and the Black Queens makes Ghana proud. And that's it for the sports segment. Over to you, Kenneth.
Thank you very much, Benaya, there with the latest in sports. And here are some of the messages you've been sending to us. David Kofiga says the only thing the opposition MPP can do today is to criticize every good thing. Why? Nana Ekwiyamwa Boatin from Ablekuma Central says President Mahama in his State of the Nation address said the economy has recovered, but the evidence on the ground is to the contrary. The government for the past 15 months has not implemented Clocks Act conditions of service. Cocoa farmers are still in disbelief that this government has given them haircuts. Who is this government deceiving? Francis in Accra says to John Mahama and his NDC government, we Ghanaians are watching them keenly with the development on the gold royalty tax mining companies yet to pay the country. They should keep to the LI for it to mature and come for the country to benefit. And let's bring you more stories this evening as a former defense Minister, Deputy Defense Minister Kofi Amankwa-Manu says the recent pirate attack and abduction of fishermen in the central region has left fisherfolk living in constant fear, attributing the incident to what he describes as failed leadership. Contributing to the State of the Nation address in Parliament, he argued that decisions taken by the NDC while in opposition, including the rejection of a contract to procure offshore petroleum vessels, have partly contributed to the situation.
Mr. Speaker, is it not worrisome that for the first time in our history, we can have pirates coming as close as within 30 nautical miles of our waters? approximately 45 kilometers, having a field day to the extent of abducting our compatriots. Is that not worrisome? It is very worrisome. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes I ask, where did we get here? And how did we get here? My colleague alluded to the fact that when a contract was brought to this House, it had to be withdrawn. Mr. Speaker, when the contract was brought to this House, I sat right there. And in fact, at the mere mention of that contract, our colleagues rejected with an emphatic no. That
Right, you've been listening to Kofi Amankwah, who is a former Deputy Defense Minister. Professor Vladimir Enchidanso is a former Dean and Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, and is joining me on the telephone lines for a conversation on the back of this. Welcome to the program. Do you agree with the former Deputy Defense Minister that attack that happened last week is as a result of the rejection of a contract to procure offshore petroleum vessels?
Well, I didn't hear the full conversation, but a rejection of a contract or an acceptance of it would not necessarily stop Piracy from doing what they do. We could have had the contract all right, and yet they would have embarked upon what they did. So for me, I do not think that the contract rejection and or acceptance had anything to do. I mean, the cause effect, I don't see the causal link between the acceptance of it and the denial of such situations that occurred.
We've also been hearing some responses from the majority side, particularly James Agaga, who is the chairman of Parliament's Defense and Interior Committee, who says that the swift response by the Ghana Navy in rescuing the 71 fishermen deserves commendation.
Well, I think I agree with him. Whether we have a contract or not, the Ghana Navy has an obligation to patrol the seas for us. So that's an indication that the institution is working. And so we don't need to politicize this situation. An unfortunate situation. What we need to do is to learn lessons from it and put our strategies together so that they don't happen again. And we must be informed that the epicenter of piracy has moved from Southeast Asia through the Ethiopia, Somalia area, and now it's in the Gulf of Guinea. Right. So these things might happen and happen and happen again. So Parliament must have the institutions built for ensuring safety to be able to be capable of doing what they did the last time.
Professor Vladimir Enchidanso, thank you very much. He's a former Dean and Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College in Accra. And that's it for Newsline this evening. Thank you very much for being a part of the show. My name is Kenneth Gyasi. Have a good evening.